Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Day in History, where we take a look back at a specific day in history, examine the events of that day, the historic context in which those events took place, the historic ramifications of those events, and we also take a look at some people that were born and some people that died on that day. As always, if you have not yet, hit the subscribe button, the bell notification icon to be alerted anytime I post new content, and tell a friend. And without any further ado, this day in history, March the 20th. And on this day in 2003, one of the most controversial events in American history took place: the invasion of Iraq. The lead up to the war in Iraq was very controversial. It was very hotly debated in American society at large and around the world, with many people opposed to it and many people equally in favor of it. The Bush administration made the case that weapons of mass destruction, that the Iraqi regime possessed them and were eagerly seeking to use them and also trying to sell them, and that they did not want the proof to be a mushroom cloud over a U.S. city or a city in the West. This was a very key point of the build-up to the war in Iraq. Also, they made the case that Saddam Hussein had many human rights atrocities and committed many war crimes over the years that warranted him being removed from power to secure peace in the broader Middle East and the world. In the days leading up to the invasion, after the U.S. and coalition forces had amassed troops along the Iraq-Kuwait border, the Bush administration and the coalition gave Saddam Hussein and his government 48 hours to leave Iraq. 90 minutes after that deadline passed, Bush ordered the bombing of select targets in Baghdad on intelligence that high-value Iraqi government targets were in those buildings. Shortly thereafter, the ground war would begin. As I said, this is a very controversial event because after the invasion, fairly quickly it became apparent, one, that Iraq did not have weapons of mass destruction and huge stockpiles of chemical weapons as the Bush administration had. It was a fairly quick initial part of the war. You would have the fall of Baghdad, and then you would have, on May the 1st, President Bush declaring the end of major combat operations in Iraq, ending. And that's May 1st, 2003, less than 2 months after the invasion. Of course, the war was not over. And it would be a long time before Iraq would see peace. In the initial part of the invasion, America was seen as liberators. But shortly thereafter, Iraqis began to resent the American presence, disenchantment in America with the direction of the war certainly became hard felt, and it was a very, very white hot time in American politics. Bush risked re-election on Iraq. That bet paid off for him. The American people re-elected him. and were still largely in favor of the war. But through 2005, through 2006, and on, American sentiment in favor of the war would quickly fade, and Bush's approval rating would suffer as the death toll went up dramatically, and it became apparent that America was not in the best of places in Iraq. In the initial invasion, 238 American soldiers would be killed. Over the ensuing rest of the war, 4,258 would die. As I said, this is a very controversial event. There are still very white hot feelings on both sides of this event. We even see it debated in the 2020 presidential election. Yeah, this is one of those events that it encapsulates so much more than a day because it had so many parts. But it all began on this day in 2003. Births that occurred on this day. In 1943, in Pontiac, Ohio, Douglas Tompkins was born. Tompkins would found the North Face, of course, the popular clothing and outdoor company that many people know and love. I'm sure there's not a college student in America that does not have at least one piece of North Face products. I am certainly a fan of North Face. I have a North Face backpack. I have a North Face jacket. Some North Face pants even. I'm a very big proponent of the brand. Tompkins was a big conservationist, naturally, because he was an outdoor enthusiast. And something interesting and kind of funny that I found to me in researching Tompkins, he would divorce his first wife. That's not the funny part at all. The part that I found interesting was his second wife was the CEO of Patagonia, of course, another outdoor and clothing company. And she was also a conservationist. Their love of the outdoors would obviously bring them together. And Tompkins sadly would pass away in 2015 in Chile, but he was doing what he loved. He was kayaking. So I would say that's a life well lived. Some deaths that occurred on this day. In 2010, Stewart Udall would die at the age of 90 in Santa Fe. Udall was the father of current Senator Tom Udall and former Congressman Mo Udall. He would serve in the House of Representatives and serve as Secretary of Interior under John Kennedy and Lyndon Johnson. During his time as Secretary of Interior, he was aggressive in the expansion of a national park system, national monuments, public lands, all manner of designations. including one not far from the location where I live. Russell Cave National Monument was one of the monuments that became a national monument during his time. It was donated to the United States government for the enjoyment of the American people by the National Geographic Society. So, Mr. Udall had a profound effect on land close to me. And it's one of the smaller parts of a national park and service. I believe it has around 21,000 visitors a year. So if you're ever in Northeast Alabama, go give it a visit. Especially though after, as I'm recording this video, after this coronavirus passes, we want to practice safe social distancing and make sure that we're not needlessly potentially bringing harm to others. So that is all for today. I'll see you again later today with the actual day I'm recording this, March 20th, this day in history.